And Mr. Secretary, you know, Poppy and I think we were all struck by what your husband wrote about what it means for daily life, talking about, you know, the madness of the daily routine and saying that something like this is having the right to juggle it all with the person who makes you feel loved and supported amidst the chaos, you know, putting it in just a personal context like that. I do want you to respond, though, to this Republican Congresswoman, Vicky Hartzler, who was on the floor on Capitol Hill pushing back and urging people to vote against this. This is what her message was.
I hope and pray that my colleagues will find the courage to join me in opposing this misguided and this dangerous bill. I yield back.
What did you make of that?
I just wonder if she could see the family life that that Chasten wrote about so movingly in that piece on Medium, and that again is the most important experience in my day. If you believe in family, if you believe in kindness, if you believe in love, then you ought to see what goes on in millions of families, including mine, where the love and the institutional support of marriage that binds me and Chasten together, including through hard times and you know, a tug of war over who's going to do the dishes when we're both exhausted, and you know, what to do when we run out of you know, run out of eggs, or those puffs that you can put into a little cup that have a remarkable kind of bribery effect on getting the kids to settle down, quiet down when they're in the stroller or the minivan. I mean, but beneath that, just a deep
wait, you have a minivan
that provides the stability that is, oh yeah, and that's another example of how marriage changes you and how kids change you. I never thought I would be a minivan person. Never.
Yeah, you get there. You get there.
The things
kids
we do
it
for the love of our children.
You know what
right?
is funny? I talked to Sanjay Gupta, and I have a whole thing about his vehicles. Like, I'm
Does
a
he
dad
have a
now, and I
minivan?
have a minivan, and
No.
now people are just
Yeah.
a dad, and he has a minivan. I'll be there one day.
Tell you what, for a party that brands itself the party of family values, these people have managed to find a way to present themselves as both morally bankrupt and devoid not just of family values, but humanity as a whole. Compare that with Pete Buttigieg describing his family life in a same-sex marriage, which is no different whatsoever than that of a heterosexual marriage, and it starts to become clear which party actually displays family values and which party's identity is just predicated on bigotry and insecurity. And let's be clear, the issue here isn't isolated to just people like Vicky Hartzler. Laura Ingraham came on Fox News after the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act, which was signed into law by President Biden, and said this.
Now, as we just mentioned with Governor DeSantis, Joe Biden held kind of an over-the-top, celebration, this extravaganza that was named the Respect for Marriage Act, a bill that moves to restrict freedom of religion and freedom of speech even, meaning whether you're Catholic or evangelical or maybe Muslim, any serious person of faith, you will not necessarily have the rights tomorrow that you had yesterday. But like Pelosi made famous, Biden tried to frame this as protecting the children.
And to that I'd ask, how? How is other people getting equal rights in any way to the detriment of rights that already exist? And the answer, of course, is that it's not. But these bigots need to find a way to frame this as an attack on religious rights, because the reality, which is that same-sex marriage has zero impact on the sanctity of marriage for anyone else, is too reasonable. And so instead, they need to pretend that allowing people to have equal rights is an attack on the people who lose nothing. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And here's the thing, these Republicans like Vicky Hartzler and Laura Ingraham are so desperate to try and draw some distinction between straight and gay couples because they rely on convincing people that there's some big scary difference, when in reality, there's not. And so they continue to demonize and vilify, because once it becomes apparent that we're all the same, then they lose their justification to fearmonger about LGBT couples marrying. And instead, what actually becomes apparent is that they're just bigots. And so what Pete is doing here is smart, because at the end of the day, his life as a dad with Chasten isn't different than anyone else's. And when people are able to recognize those similarities, from dishes to minivans, their fears about people who are different from them go away. That's how empathy works, that's how understanding works, that's how acceptance works. I know that it might not seem like a big thing, but Pete being on air and normalizing the realities of his life is important to people who might not otherwise have any insight or appreciation of how similar heterosexual and same-sex marriages are. And all of this comes in the aftermath of the Respect for Marriage Act being signed into law, which was done in response to the conservatives on the Supreme Court and in state legislatures overturning Roe and banning abortion in states nationwide. This is a party that exists now to strip away civil and long-standing rights. And so now, in 2022, it's suddenly become necessary to pass legislation affirming the rights of two people to be married, in a country that fashions itself some beacon of freedom in the world, no less. As far as Republicans are concerned, freedom only counts when it's on issues that are convenient for them. And by the way, that's a sentiment that was echoed by Tammy Baldwin, who was the first openly gay person elected to the U.S. Senate in 2012 during our latest interview.
What I have seen change, especially with marriage equality and so many same-sex couples being visible in, not only celebrating their marriages, but out as families, there are hardly any colleagues that, no matter what party, Democrat or Republican, that don't know a gay couple, that don't have a friend or a loved one or a staff member who's in a same-sex marriage. And that begins to change everything. And I'd love to hope and think that my presence as a colleague, their colleague in the United States Senate, was helpful in their making those moves and considering their views. But it also has been so bolstered by the visibility of gay Americans and the fact that that has also brought a sea change in American opinion. Over 70% of Americans believe that same-sex marriages deserve the same respect as opposite-sex marriages.
One image I think that was really striking to a lot of people was on the day that the House passed this bill, there was a Republican from Missouri, Vicky Hartzler, who pretty much stood up and got herself to the point of tears, practically begging her colleagues to vote against this bill. I guess, what was your reaction to seeing that?
There are wrought emotions, and some of them, don't stand up. I know that there were people, I think, with every major piece of civil rights legislation, issuing statements that would suggest that the sky was going to indeed fall. And we heard, even with this legislation, the Respect for Marriage Act, that it was, some sort of huge conflict with the religious liberties that we enjoy here in America. Nothing could be further from the truth. But one of the ways I was able to help earn the support of 12 Republican senators in the United States Senate to support this bill and get it through a Senate filibuster was by listening and adding some clarification language that makes it super clear that there is no conflict between the Respect for Marriage Act, repealing the Defense of Marriage Act, and religious liberties. There's just no conflict here, and we were able to clarify that and move forward.
Yeah, and what I hope that people can recognize at some point, although it's I feel like we would already have been there by this point, is that people gaining rights doesn't deprive other people of their own rights that they've already gotten. It just allows other people to enjoy equal rights. But I think something that we've learned is that seems like too complex of a topic for some people to comprehend. So good on Pete for playing his role in normalizing what, frankly, the vast majority of Americans are already normalized to. And here's to hoping that what we're seeing now from the right is recognized for exactly what it is. Not family values, not conserving religious liberty, not a defense of the sanctity of marriage, but abject bigotry and nothing more. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.